Today, we're going to discuss correlational research. And correlational research is actually a non-experimental research. One of the examples of non-experimental research. So we were able to talk about three types of experimental research: the quasi, the true experimental research, and the pre-experimental research. This time, let's talk about non-experimental research. And under non-experimental research, we have descriptive research, which is very easy, very, I think, you are very familiar with that particular research, descriptive research, no? Trying to take a look at the phenomenon. Then it could be a survey, it could be conducting questionnaire, it could be mastery level, trying to determine the mastery level of the students. But of course, it's still under quantitative research. For correlational research, this is also another type of quantitative research, but it is actually non-experimental research. Okay? It investigates relationships between variables without the researcher controlling or manipulating any of the variables. Comparing it with experimental research, we would be manipulating, right? The independent variable in order for us to determine whether there is a significant difference between the performance of the students after applying the intervention. So there is a manipulation. So here in correlational research, it reflects the strengths and or direction of the relationship between two or more variables. Okay, it could be two variables, the x and y variables, whether it is positively correlated, negatively correlated, or there is no correlation at all. Yan. Are you still with me? Or there is no correlation at all. I know that you are very familiar with correlational research, and I think I will not be discussing this too much kasi we are all familiar with correlational research. When we had our college life, maybe we were able to encounter correlational research anymore already and during our high school life. At saka ang dami ng researchers related uh, or similar to correlational research, or maybe different subject areas but still correlational research. So this is a type of non-experimental research, as I mentioned a while ago, in which you as the researcher measures two variables. No? It could be the x and y, it could be more than that, and assess the statistical relationship of the two variables. So there are essentially two reasons why researchers are interested in statistical relationship between variables. That's why they have chosen to conduct a correlational study rather than experimental research. So the first is that they do not believe that statistical relationship is a causal one. And the other reason that the researchers would choose to use correlational study rather than experiment is that the statistical relationship of interest is thought to be causal. But the researchers cannot manipulate the independent variable because in correlational research, it's impossible, impractical, or sometimes unethical. For example, you would want to um, determine the relationship between two variables. And the first variable would be the father who is smoking and the health of his son or daughter. Of course, it is unethical to expose kids to smoking fathers, right, or parents. So we cannot do experimentation. Therefore, we will do correlational research. Okay. Another example, if you want to correlate uh, the the height and weight of a particular person or the consumption of coffee. Okay. As the consumption of coffee increases, is there a correlation between uh, the health of a particular person? Does it make the particular person tired? or there is no correlation at all. For example, between coffee and the height of a particular person. So correlational research, therefore, is a procedure in which subject scores on two variables are simply measured without manipulation, without intervention, without experimentation of any of the variables in your research, in order for you to determine whether there is a relationship. This research is actually ideal for gathering data quickly. That's why I asked you. It's very easy. All you need to do is to gather the data, prepare your tool, and then tap statistician. Then, charan, you have now your research. All you need to do is to explain, and then go back to the RRL, and then try to determine if there are related literature that will agree to the outcome of your research. So there are few situations where correlational research is an appropriate choice, but sometimes not the good choice. So for example, if you want to know if there is any correlation between the number of children people have and which political party they vote for, you don't think having more children causes people to vote differently, right? It's more likely that both are influenced by other variables such as age, religion, ideology, and socioeconomic status. So that's why the profile of the participants should be gathered if you want correlational research. But a strong correlation could be useful for making predictions about voting patterns. If I'm going to ask you, do you think there is a correlation between the number of children people have and the political party they vote for? Are you for the pink, for the white, or for the red? So, just an example. I'm for the pink. So correlational research examines the relationship between two or more non-manipulated variables. Take note, the key word here is non-manipulated variable. And the title, if you want to know the title, I have given you the link for my YT channel. So the keyword for the title is always the relationship. If you see the word relationship, then that's correlational research. So later on, I'll be uploading the one of the examples of correlational research. For example, learning style and mathematics anxiety, their relationship to mathematics performance of grade 7 students. Diba? So as you can see here, this is one of the conceptual frameworks that can be considered when doing correlational research. So motivation, job performance, and types of personality. So the research design that can be used immediately by just simply looking at the framework, conceptual framework, is correlational study or correlational research. Tama? So what is the relationship between motivation and job performance? So you will try to take a look if there is a relationship between motivation and job performance. If they are motivated, are they going to perform well? If they are not motivated, then they will not perform well. But how does its type of personality influence also the relationship between the two, the motivation and job performance? So it's all about relationship. But you will not do, of course, experimentation. You will just try to take a look, considering, therefore, your participants. So the next thing that should be considered is your participants. You have to choose properly. Okay? You have to consider the criteria, the sampling technique that should be used when identifying your participants in order for you to gather the right data. Okay? In order for you to gather the data that you need when doing the research. And critical also is the tool that you would be using. And so for correlational research, for example, what is the relationship between Facebook use and academic performance? Is there a relationship? Is it positive or negative correlation or no correlation at all? So the questions, the specific questions that you should be asking in your paper would be, is there a relationship between Facebook use and students' GPA? Or, and number two, is there a relationship between Facebook use and absenteeism? Are you still with me? Type letter T if you are still with me. Tagal naman. Walang nakikinig ah. Siguro you're in a place drinking your coffee because you like coffee a lot, and then when you heard Mr. Benzo say so, type letter T, then you went in front of your laptop and then type T. Yan, thank you. So what is the relationship between? It could be height and weight, birth order, and years of education. These are some examples that you can relate. Cigarette smoke per day and healthcare cost. So actually unethical, di ba? If, for example, considering number three, as I mentioned a while ago, you cannot expose kids. You cannot ask people to keep on smoking and then try to determine the effect of the the smoke to their health. It's unethical. So we'll talk about ethical guidelines. Maybe November, second week of November. First week of November, we'll be talking about other research design and qualitative data analysis. Then, how close to the front you sit in a classroom and your grade in a class? If you would be sitting in front, are you going to perform well? How about if you are seated at the back? Is there a relationship? Diba? So that's correlational research. Operationally, correlational research is a statistical analysis of covariant data to determine a pre-existing relationship. Pre-existing relationship kasi parang there is already an existing relationship, pre-existing relationship, but is it negative? Is it positive? Is strongly correlated or not? Or there is no correlation at all? So take note again and again, I keep on telling you, when you do correlational research, there should be no attempt to manipulate an independent variable. Okay, it's impossible. If you would be manipulating an independent variable, then you might as well do experimental research. Remember, correlational research is a non-experimental research. And it's still quantitative research. Though both non-experimental and experimental research are quantitative research, but they differ in nature, particularly the manipulation of the independent variable. So what's the purpose? Okay, so this technique or research design is used to relate two or more variables and allow predictions of outcomes based on causative relationships between the variables and not the effect. So there are two things that should be done. Could be the models, the two types of models, the explanatory design and prediction design. So when you do correlational research, it's either you would like to explain the relationship or you would like to predict, okay, what will happen based on the relationship of the two variables. So explanatory design looks for simple associations only between variables and investigates the extent to which the variables are related. While for prediction, of course, predictive validity as well, it's somewhat similar, but before you can predict, you have to take a look at the relationship. You have to identify variables that will positively predict outcomes. If it is uh, positively correlated, no, is strongly correlated, then you can predict the outcome. So the statistical tools that can be used, product moment correlation. So these are the tools, and then the graphical tools in order for you to present the data, the result of your research But then again, as I mentioned, if you are not a mathematics teacher, you tap a statistician and then let the statistician analyze the data that you gathered in order for you to get the accurate uh, computation of the data that you have gathered. So I'm just showing it to you, but I'm suggesting uh, to tap expert. Example of simple scatter plot where the hours of internet use per week is being correlated to the depression scores of the participants. So what you need to do is to take a look at the mean score and then try to compute. And the regression line, as you can see, the line here, I think what color is that? Uh, that's a regression line. It's not the X and Y axis, not the regression line. We call that the regression line. The regression line, it will tell you whether the the line is positively correlated, negatively correlated, or not at all. So it is the best fitting straight line to set up or to set off data points, the points whether uh, a particular variable, when a particular variable increases, the other variable also increases. Okay, or increase, decrease, decrease, increase. If it decrease, it also decrease. So the regression line will tell you is the line that minimizes the distance that all data points fall from it. So you can represent it. As you can see here, there are forms of association when you do correlational research of the two variables, positive, negative, and no correlation at all. As you can see here, increase, increase, this one, increase, decrease, and no correlation at all. So a positive correlation is a positive value of R that indicates the values of two factors change in the same direction. So if, for example, one variable increase, then another variable also, other variable also increases, then it's a positively correlated. But remember, since this is quantitative research, you can see whether it is perfectly correlated if you get one or strongly correlated 0.90 and above. And if one variable decrease, the other variable also decrease. So it's still positively correlated. Negatively correlated, one increase and then the other one would decrease, or the other one decrease, then the other one will increase. So that's negatively correlated. Take a look at this example, the x and y. X is 1, then y is 5. As the value of x increases, then the value of y decreases. So it's a negative correlation. X1, 5, 2, 3. So the two examples show negative correlation. And then if in order for you to determine whether it is strongly correlated or not correlated at all, you have to compute for the value of R. So therefore, the degree of association, the rule of thumb that should be considered is determined as -1 to +1 or 0. The 0, if you would be able to compute for 0, then there exists no correlation. And a value of -1, and whether it's negative or positive, it shows 100% correlation. But of course, you cannot, sometimes, no, I do not know if there are already researches, particularly correlational research, na perfect yung correlation. It's sometimes strongly correlated or correlated only. Here, another example, comparing the two variables, IQ score and achievement. The research question that can be used here is this: do the higher IQ scores the students have the better achievement they make. If a particular student has a high IQ, will that particular student perform better? And the research objectives to investigate the correlation between students' IQ scores and student achievement. In the template provided, we don't need to include the research objectives. And the assumption, remember, there will be assumption when you do correlational research. There is a correlation between students' IQ scores and students' achievement, always in a positive note. And then the hypothesis, the higher IQ scores the students have, the better achievement they make. So our aim is always to reject the null hypothesis and then accept, of course, our alternative hypothesis. There is no correlation between students' IQ scores and students' achievement. That's why we are doing the correlational research, because we want to show that there is a relationship. So the null hypothesis should be rejected. We want to reject the null hypothesis. And we want to show that there is a relationship between the IQ score and then the achievement of the students. But if in your research, when you did correlation, for example, you did a correlational research and then there is no relationship at all, then you go on, you explain to the panelists, you explain to them that you did all the things that should be done considering the research design, you followed the sampling technique and all the things that should be considered in the preparation of correlational research, but the result does not show correlation at all. So it's okay, rather than editing the data that you have in order for you to have a correlation. So better present. You have to be realistic. You have to face the reality that there is no relationship between the two variables that you would like to correlate. So that's correlational research. It is a design, okay, to measure two or more factors to determine or estimate the extent to which the values for the factors are related or changed in an identifiable pattern. And the correlation coefficient is the statistical treatment or the statistic that can be used to measure the strength and direction of the relationship, whether it is positive or negatively correlated. So we call that correlation coefficient. And the design, di ba, chapter number 3, methodology, the research design. So your research design is correlational research. So these are the correlation coefficients, Pearson or yung R that I'm referring about a while ago. Spearman rho is still R, could be point biserial or P. But then again, better for you to tap statistician, no? Then you just need to explain the result of your research. Use SPSS if you want, if you know. Okay? Take a look at this. There are two circles, Venn diagram. It actually represents the variance of factor, the x and y, variance in x alone and then variance in y alone, and then the covariance, So a while ago, when we talk of the correlational research operationally, we are actually talking about what? Let's go back to that slide. Operational definition. Okay, the operational definition is a statistical analysis of covariant. Okay, so therefore the intersection of the two variables, the x and y. Okay, so the covariance of the x and y, the variances of the x and y covary in as much as the two circles overlap in this part, in the overlapping part of the two circles. So the more overlap or shared variance of these x and y variables, the more the two factors are related. So the bigger the better. So using a correlational design, we do not manipulate an independent variable. So take note, we do not manipulate the independent variable. And we certainly make little effort to control for other possible factors that may also vary with the two variables we measured. For this reason, a significant correlation does not show that one factor causes changes in a second factor or yung causality. Meron naman tayong causal comparative, right? Research design. Okay, so that's it for correlational research. This time, allow me to show you the example of correlational research, which I'll be uploading later on. This is not a perfect example. This was submitted to me, but there are uh, things to be improved. But allow me to show you in order for you to see an example of correlational research. Can you see now the Word file?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes,
thank
sir.
you. The title is Learn. I'll be providing you a copy of this under file. So learning style and mathematics anxiety, their relationship. So that means correlational research to mathematics performance of Calawis National High School. So if you would be preparing a title, make sure to be specific. Okay? National High School, learning style. So there are so many students. So you can focus on grade 9 only, grade 10 only. Then acknowledgement, dedication, if you want table of contents. Okay, so what you need to consider, the introduction, again, the assumption of the study should be considered. Research local, then significance of the study scope and the limiting. Let's take a look at the methodology immediately. Okay, chapter number 3. Chapter number 3, page 29. Okay, so we'll start with the research methodology. Okay, chapter 3 could be at the middle if you want. Then this chapter presents the research design, setting of the study, subject of the study, blah, blah, blah. Then the research design, you will explain correlational research. Okay. Then you explain further. Then you indicate mm, the authors. Okay. Cite more authors and then explain. So explain also that correlational research is actually a quantitative research. Okay. So the respondents should also be included. The research instruments, learning style checklist in order for you to know the learning style of the students. Okay, blah, 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 blah. So concrete experience, reflective. Then after that, you proceed with the scale. Ayan. The mathematics anxiety learning scale. Kasi we are actually talking about the mathematics anxiety, the level of the anxieties, and then the grade. Don't forget the performance. So here in here, if you would be having correlational research and you want the relationship of a particular variable to the performance of the students, make sure to ask permission from the parents of the students, from the principal, that the grades of the students will be utilized for your research. Then data gathering procedure.